Part 15, Hell Act 5, the final act. We make our way to Shank, and with Death Sentry, it makes quick work of his minions. Sharptooth drops us Talrasha's armor. 40 resistance to cold, lightning, fire, magic damage reduction, and magic find. Stylin'. Well, Tony died again, and oh crap, not enough gold. Back to Act 1. After farming up a bit of gold, I made a terrible mistake. I opened a town portal. This cancels out my portal in Act 5, so I have to run all the way back. So I head all the way back up to Aria Plateau and grab the waypoint there so I can continue farming up a bit more gold. We make our way back up to deal with Thresh Socket. Here I continue to use Mind Blast on him as he is lightning immune, and wanted to make sure that my mercenary stayed alive, so I let him do all the work. Here you can also throw out Fire Blast to help him out, but his slaps were brutal and would sometimes one-shot my mercenary. We reach level 85 and dump those points into Vitality and charge Bolt Sentry. In Frozen River we grab an 18 to life and lightning resistance small charm. This is really good, although the resistances could be a bit better. Remember, when navigating Frozen River, Mind Blast and Cloak of Shadows will be your friend depending on the mobs you get. Using Cloak of Shadows will completely nerf the ability for souls to attack you long range, so use that to your advantage. It's extremely late in the game here, but we still have a Prayer Mercenary, which is okay, but a Holy Freeze Mercenary would be better. A defensive Mercenary in Nightmare will give you a Holy Freeze aura, which is great for slowing down enemy mobs. Always make sure to remove your Mercenary's equipment before hiring a new one, as your items will be lost if you do not do so otherwise. While in Nightmare, I figured I'd do a little bit of farming. At Andariel, I get Immortal King Helmet. We head back to Hell and continue the progress. We run into a huge pack of Moonlords. Moonlords are incredibly deadly with their frenzies, so we have to do a little bit of crowd control here. I use Mind Blast and Lightning Sentry for this to keep them distracted. There is also one that is cursed and applies amp damage to the rest of the pack. As long as they are focused on one another, you'll eventually take them down with Lightning and Death Sentry. But unfortunately it does seem that we have lightning immunities, so a bit of multitasking between Fire Blast, Lightning Sentry, and Mind Blast is needed here to take them down. Back to Act 1 for another pit stop, full pun intended, and we find Nokozan Relic. This is a great low-level amulet with huge amounts of fire resistance and faster hit recovery. But our current amulet gives 19 all resistances, so that's a little bit better overall with Fade. In the pit, we grab an ethereal scarab husk, which we can try and put sockets in for our mercenary later. On our way to Countess, we find Chance Guards. Chance Guards are great for magic and gold finds, so I swap these out for now while farming up. Farming up in Lower Karast, I get a flawed sapphire and decide to upgrade all my Ko's so I can have some additional rune. 3 Ko runes and a flawed sapphire makes a fall rune. In the Countess Tower, I get an rune, but not from the Countess. At the Countess, I get my Thul rune, which I will then try and socket my Scarab Husk armor with. Now to bug our armor. Ethereal armor gets bugged when cubing and doubles the defense of the base of the item, unlike normal items that get socketed. This is preferred for mercenaries as they will be able to be even more tankier and you don't have to repair the armor. Here I was hoping to get 3 sockets for treachery or 4 sockets for a stone, but I get 2 instead. It isn't horrible though. The defense is really amazing on this, so I could be able to use this for a smoke base instead for the resistances for my mercenary. Farming up, I find an 11 all resistance ring, which is really nice. Most of my rings have a little less all resistances, so I swap it out with one of my rare rings instead. I had another ring saved up that is actually 15 all resistances in my stash, so I make sure to swap it out for this one. Back to another Lower Cross farm, and I find a Barb Skiller charm. With all the barbarian things, I should have made a barbarian so I can get more assassin items. I start crafting some blood helms for my mercenary and get a few nice ones. This one has 1 socket to it, which can be great with the right jewel, so I put an attack speed jewel in it for the faster and deadly strike procs and lifesteal. Although the circlet is really great too with the added strength and resistances, we'll be able to do a bit more damage overall with this helm. And we find another barbarian skiller. I decide to craft a blood amulet, which is perfect ruby, amulet, and any jewel. This gets us an extremely awesome amulet. It has 49 to life, all resistance is 18, 10 faster run walk, lifesteal, and combat skills for a paladin. Back to farming up Countess and we get an ethereal Ariad's face. This game really wants me to be a barbarian. This helmet is excellent for an Act 5 mercenary though. I take another pit stop at Lower Cross and we find Natalia's boots. I already have Nat's boots, but these ones have a little bit more resistances than my others, but my others also have more defense. Here, I would opt for more resistances over defense. And just a few minutes later, I find Hellmouth. This is not something that we'll be using, but it is still pretty neat. The fire absorb on it could be really great on this. We finally get a Lum rune for our rune word Smoke. So with a Nef and a Lum, we create Smoke in our Eth Scarab Husk armor. After a bit of farming, we head back and deal with Ancients. We first load up on traps and see what type of spawns we get from the Ancient. Unfortunately, Talik was fire and lightning immune, which is a huge problem because we will not be able to do any damage to him, so I had to use a town portal to reset this. In fact, I had to reset this more times than I would ever have liked. My mercenary just kept dying. With the constant reviving of my mercenary and leaving the area, I think of something different to do. I go back to Act 1 and find a teleport charge staff. Hopefully being able to teleport out of range of the other Ancients, we can focus on one at a time. The Ancients will always have an immunity. Talik will always be fire immune, Corlic cold, and Madoc lightning. But with the double immunity, it can be a little bit more difficult to deal with. So we had to restart a few times as my mercenary would die almost immediately at every fight. I unfortunately had to go back and farm previous acts to get gold to revive my mercenary as well. This was incredibly painful as I had to restart Ancients at least 20 times before I got it right. Finally, after much trial and error and many resurrections of our mercenary, we were able to get a decent fight. It still took forever though. I first started with Corlic. I used lower resistance and keep feeding my mercenary potions and we had no additional problem with him. Next we continue with Talik. Talik can be always a little bit more of a problem though. I use life tap on him so that my mercenary can stay alive a little bit longer and chunk him down. Things were going great until they weren't. My mercenary wasn't able to life tap off of him for whatever reason, so he died. At this point I would restart, but with so many other restarts, I decided not to because I just wanted to be done with this. After a bit of kiting Talik and playing Ring Around the Rosie, he goes down and it's time for our last challenge, Madoc. Madoc is by default lightning immune. I was able to hide behind a pillar here so I wouldn't be able to take any damage while keeping Madoc in one place. This was the perfect setup. Thankfully, I could actually remove the lightning immune with the lower resistance one, but he's still heavily resistant to lightning damage. So I try and go for Fire Blast alongside of Lightning Sentry. Here, I would wait until I had my mana refilled before attacking so I can take full advantage of lower resistance during that time, as I had a limited amount of charges. And with enough time and a hell of a lot of patience, we were able to take down the raid boss. Going through Worldstone Keep, we find Water Walks, which are excellent pair of boots, faster on walk, defense, life, and an upgrade to your max fire resistance. Baal's Throne Room. Remember all the great tips and tricks of Mind Blast and how it can save your life and control the enemies. Another good tip is to always clear out the throne room so you're able to kite mobs freely around. If you're not feeling adventurous enough, you can always lure them out of the throne room and skip them. One thing to be careful of is to be careful of Mind Blast, as sometimes it can bug the throne room thinking that enemies are still in it. And now, the final showdown, Baal. Baal can always be a tedious fight, but he is one of the easier ones to deal with. I unfortunately had to keep going back to revive my mercenary as he was not tanky enough. This was also an incredibly tedious fight. Unlike the Ancients, it didn't matter if I had to set up a TP to go back to town. And I had to go back to town quite often. Always remember if that Baal casts too many appendages or his clone, make a town portal far enough away from him so that you can go back to town and they will despawn. Remember, hardcore players 8 requires patience and a lot of time. Congratulations, hero, you are now a Guardian Assassin. Now let's go over the stats. We ended at level 87. Our strength is at 101, dex is a base at 35, vitality is at 427, and we have a base energy of 25. Now for skills. We max Fire Blast, Shockweb, Lightning, and Death Sentry, and the rest of the points go into Charge Bolt Sentry. But remember, you want to have 1 point into most of the Shadow Discipline skills. 1 point into Burst and Speed and Fade. These could be higher depending on your playstyle. I also have 1 point into Shadow Master for distractions, and Cloak of Shadows and Mind Blast are essential. And now for the equipment. We have Spirit Sword, Chance Guards, an all resistance ring, a rare belt with resistances, life and fast to hit recovery, a crafted resistance and life ring, water walk boots, rhyme shield, Talrash's guardianship, rock stopper, and a rare skill amulet, with some resistance and life charms. For our mercenary, we have an ethereal battle scythe insight, an ethereal scarab husk smoke, and a crafted blood helm with an increased attack speed jewel. Enjoyed the video? Make sure to like and subscribe the channel for more videos. Playing along? Post a comment below of your findings so far. Or you can watch live at twitch.tv/AlaraShade.